Hello and welcome to another video. So this is going to be a really quick video, but very necessary as I found these two courses to be the two most challenging courses in the degree plan. When I searched the internet to look for information like what I'm going to give you, like what do I study specifically when there's so much to study, I did not find it. And what I did found via like Reddit and stuff like that was really discouraging because a lot of people were just talking about how much they passed it. I mean, how much they failed it and how nervous they were about taking it. So that's very unhelpful. So I did not do this for every course. You do know that I have the task helpers. You can pay for them. They're on my website. If I have any additional information for these courses in particular or anything else as it relates to the degree program, I will also link that down below in the description. This video is ad free, so this is my gift to you. I would love to offer you some assistance as, like I said, I needed it. But I just finished taking the science and I took the social studies one about 4 days ago at this point, so fairly new, but I do have some notes. So the first class is the elementary social studies curriculum. It's D673. We're in 2025. So if you see this video any other time, things might change as things often do change. But let's talk about this class in particular. Now, some of these things can be used for both classes, but I did separate them just so we can, really get into what it is that we need to study. So, first thing is, like I always tell you, read all of the material. For the social studies class specifically, read everything, okay? Read everything for the social studies class. Also, watch all of the videos, do all any little, those little articles. A lot of times you're like reading it and you don't see there's like a little small word that's like highlighted in blue. Click on it, be sure to read that, because what I found is a lot of the questions that they ask me, like, I didn't even read that. Most of the time it's stuff that was in those articles. So I'm not saying jam pack your brain, but read the stuff, okay? Also, another tip is read it, do all the studying, and then take your test soon after you study. Don't wait. Okay. I did find that the social studies course was easier because some of this stuff you've just seen play out in the world around us. So it's easier to relate to. The science is different. And we'll talk about that here in a moment. So some of the things that I know that you need to study is the amendments. Okay. And I did have a question pulled up here specifically. Let me see if I can find it. There's a question from the test. Okay, basically it was asking what amendment, which amendment gave rights to, let's say, people of color to vote. Okay, so you would choose the right one, but all of the other options on there, you need to know those as well. How do you know which one to choose if you don't know which one not to choose? So when you're taking your pre-assessment, be looking for that in the questions. As a matter of fact, I want to go ahead and pull it up so that you know exactly what I'm talking about, because I feel like you're looking at me like you don't know what I'm talking about. Let's go here. Yeah, so that's a tip. Also, when you please take the pre-assessment. You have to. It won't unlock the thing, but when you take the pre-assessment, pull up your report and actually look at it and see where it is that you need to study. Even if you did get something right, but you were reading a question and you didn't know what was going on, I would suggest that you go in and you study that as well. Okay, so this question right here says, which amendment to the U.S. Constitution is often cited in discussions about states' rights? And the answer is the 10th Amendment. However, there are choices for the First Amendment, the 16th Amendment, and the 26th Amendment. If you don't know what all those amendments are, at least three of them, three out of the four, at least two of them, you're probably going to get it wrong, right? Because you don't know which one is right or wrong. So when you're studying like that, when you're studying things like that, I would suggest that you study more than one. And I will tell you that I would suggest that you study the amendments 13 through 19 specifically. Okay. I will study those and I will also know the significance of amendments 1 through 10. Okay. Something else that I will look at and study is the presidents. Okay. What was special during their presidency? And you'll find this. Don't just go studying random presidents. The ones that are outlined in the text, again, you can pull up that same, you can use that same trick when you do the pre-assessment. You see a president there and it's in the multiple choice and you don't know, you don't know what he did go ahead and look that up. Now you can look up the information outside of the textbook because sometimes it's kind of hard to find it in there, but make sure you know what was significant, okay? And it would be even more beneficial if you found his name within the text and then you read what it says there, because we know that those materials they're going to test you on. Another thing is familiar with the wars mentioned and why they started and ended. They had quite a bit of questions concerning this. So, any war or conflict that you read, be familiar with why it started and why it ended. You will get a pretty good guide doing this when you take the tests, like when you take those tests inside of the lesson. I would highly suggest that you take those. If you don't get it, if you're getting everything wrong, go back up and read again, okay? And don't be afraid to find other videos to help you understand better. The next thing is be familiar with civil rights and the laws that kind of help those rights along, gave rights to people of color. Be familiar with those things. Federalists and anti-federalists. I had to pull up separate information to help me understand what this was talking about. And what I came up with was like Federalists for the federal government, anti-federalists against, because you need to know about the Federalist Papers and all that kind of stuff. Sons of Liberty, I believe it was. That's something else that you need to look. I didn't put this on my notes, but that's something else that you need to know about. Those different groups and things like that. The next thing is the structure of government and what they can do. And this was also important. You'll find this on the test. I also want to say that you make use of the whiteboard. I did not used to do this. Like I said, some of the tests are just easier. You don't need to do that. These two, I used my whiteboard. And you're like, girl, we're not doing math problems here. What I need to use the whiteboard for? Here's my little marker. I use the right whiteboard. So, when you're about to take the proctor exam, you got a lot of things on your mind. They're annoying with this camera, okay? They are annoying with the angle of the camera. Just figure out how to get that together. I think I'm going to put something in here for you about that too, even though I've talked about it in the past. Figure out a way to get that together, because it can be very distracting when you're trying to like remember information that's just kind of right here and you want to hurry up and get into the test and they're saying, oh, could you scoot your camera back? It's annoying. I know. I get it. But with that being said, when you're setting up everything, as soon as you enter into the test, like as soon as you press start, you're able to jot things down on your whiteboard. And I would highly suggest you do that. This is one of those things that I'll remember. And you don't have to like write out the whole thing. You could just write like judicial, you could just write J, and then you just need to write like what they are allowed to do, because there was quite a bit of questions about this on the test. Okay, so all the best to you with the social studies. Remember, I said read everything, take those pre-assessments, and then actually look at your pre-assessment report and study the things. Even the question that you did get right, if you guessed it and you got it right, go ahead and still make sure that you know what the question is asking. I find that a lot of the time, it's really slow down and understand what the question is asking. And you'll find a lot of it to be common sense. Okay. So let's move on to the science. Now, science for me is very difficult. Okay. Science, you guys probably know at this point in time, if you saw the other video, the physical, what's it called? Physical science? Physical science. I believe that's what the class was called. I left the whole university behind that class. That class was very challenging. I would highly suggest that you take that class stat, okay, quickly at one of these third-party universities while we're still allowed to integrate that into the degree program, because the class was very hard, especially if you find science very hard. And I'm going to tell you right now, the advisors and stuff like that, they're not very helpful. Even with these courses right here, they're not very helpful as far as giving you information. Let me tell you that I failed the science class here. And basically, I had to tell them that I would just like a second opportunity because the information that you're giving me is not helpful. I told her that the study guide that she gave me wasn't helpful. It just felt like I was searching for answers and not studying. And it was true. And to God be the glory. They actually gave me a second opportunity and I passed it. So I'm telling you what I did to pass it. You know where you're at on this channel, okay? You know where you are. I also had to pray because I really just don't like science. I just don't like science. A lot of it, if you're like me, you know that some of it's a lie. Okay, some of it is a lie. The whole globe thing, it's dispelled. Okay, it goes against what I know to be true. Therefore, everything else, I just kind of find it very hard to believe. And I don't want to sit here and read and believe something that I know is a lie. So that's why it's very hard for me. That might have thrown you off and you might not want to hear anything else I have to say, but I'm okay with that. Okay. I'm here to help who needs to be helped. So, science. I almost left the university behind that science class. Again, I would highly suggest that you take it. I would suggest that you take the science class or anything else that you can't satisfy via third party, especially if you know that you have trouble with it as well. But again, like I was saying, science is very different than social studies. Some of the social studies things was kind of common sense. The science thing is like you have to know the principles and all that kind of stuff that they are talking about and explaining. Okay. You have to actually be able to grasp the concept, and it's harder for me. Okay. So, with that being said, for the science, I did not find the reading to be all that effective. It seemed like a bunch of jargon. Um, but it might be helpful for you. I'm just saying this. It's way too much information and too many principles to get for reading alone to be substantial. The good thing about science is, for the most part, everyone has like the same beliefs. You know what I mean? So once you find the information and you find what answer they're looking for, it's easy in that sense. So the videos were more helpful, but more specifically, the videos offered through the cohorts. You could reach out to your advisor and ask them if they have the pre-recorded cohorts. I like those better. Just in case it's not lining up your time, the time that you have available is not lining up with their offerings. I found those to be very helpful. Another thing I found to be very helpful is to quiz yourself. Okay. Find third party quizzes and things of that nature. You can find third party quizzes. You can use the quizzes that they have, but it's a lot of information and you just really need to know what it is that they're asking for. There's no way around it. Quizlet. If I can link the Quizlet that I use, I will link it down below. It had like 200 or something flashcards, okay? And I sat there and read through them. That was very helpful. So this material, I found quizzing yourself to be important. Of course, read it, because some of the things you're just going to have to read to just see if you can get it. Answer all the little quiz questions, read the videos. They had interactive things there. I didn't waste my time with that because I just felt like it was a waste of time. The things that helped the best were the cohort pre-recorded videos for this. Okay. The whiteboard, I told you about that. The things that I will put on the whiteboard for this OA is Newton's laws, 1 through 3. You need to know them. Okay. Just Google it, type and click images, and then look at, there's one that has like, I'll try to link it down below too. It's one that I'll put on the screen. One that has like 3. Just remember that. Do the same tip I told you, write it on your whiteboard. You need to know those, okay? And if you can't remember them off the top of your head, you need to know them. Another thing I found very helpful was the mnemonic for planets, because the first OA did ask quite a bit of things about the planets as it relates to their relation to the sun. Okay, like how close and far away and things like that. So that's something that I would look up. Be familiar with the water cycle. And like runoff, evaporation, condensation. You need to be familiar with all those things. I saw quite a bit of questions surrounding things of that nature. Clouds, I'll be honest with you. I looked at the clouds and I said, there's no way. I mean, what are I, like a meteorologist? I'm not going to be able to remember this. So I couldn't remember if you have so you're going to have to choose. You can't remember everything. Okay. So you just want to know a lot about as much as you can. But when I looked at the clouds, I'm like, this is a waste of my time. If I get 1 or 2 questions wrong about clouds, it's worth it to not stress out about that and then focus on the other things. So I did not waste too much time on the clouds, even though both OAs had questions about clouds. Okay. So like which clouds are feathery and indicate rain. And another question sounds something like, I can't even, what's the name of, I don't know, like that. Okay. So if you know the clouds, you good. You better than me. The next one is the conservation of matter. You need to know this. So asking questions like, during a chemical experiment, what would happen? What would happen what would happen in a chemical experiment? What would happen to explain why the product that you ended up with is not, see, I told you I'm not, you know what I'm saying though, right? So yeah, you also while I'm thinking about it right now, like if there was a question that said, um what form of energy is used when a battery powers a flashlight? So you need to know like thermal energy, mechanical energy, conduction, convection. You need to know those. Definitely. You need to know those. Okay. The next thing is the structure of atoms. You need to know, in my opinion, how I looked at it was where the protons, neutrons are, and you need to know those things. Okay. And you just need to know their charge. Thank you, Holy Spirit, for helping me. You need to know the periodic table and what's significant about the elements. So the elements that are going across, what do they all have in common? They have the same, properties. You need to know those things. You need to know that they're increasing in number. You can do it. Okay. I know you're looking at me like, girl, I need to know all this stuff. You can do it. You can do it. Okay. If I can do it, you can do it. The next thing is primary and secondary consumers. Both tests had quite a bit of information about this. Primary, the way I thought about it was primary is like the first, okay? And secondary means you can eat the first. So secondary is the big dog. To me, that sounds backwards, but that is how it goes. Producers, you need to know what producers are. They're the plants. Okay, because there was a lot of questions that literally I had to sit there with my eyes closed and like, okay, producer, and then picture this one eating this one and this one eating this one. And that's how I got the answer. But you need to know what they are. So primary, producer, and secondary. Okay. You need to know those in relation to the food chain. And you also need to know, thank you, Holy Spirit, for helping me. You need to know the environment. So the hydrosphere, the geosphere. You need to know those things. Thank you, Holy Spirit, for helping me. You need to know the plates in their relation. So convergent, subduction, and what do they produce when they collide, when they separate. Very easy things to. I'm helping you, girl. I wish I would have had this help. You need to know those, okay? So quiz yourself until you know them. And the Lord is helping us here, and I'm grateful for that. So because this stuff is not on my notes. Heavy lesson 1. So the stuff that actually relates to, which I really, when I took the first OA, I was so annoyed because I'm like, this is trying to teach me. I thought that the class was more about teaching. So this one was very heavy on the teaching. So the next generation science standards, core disciplinary standards, and also like science and technology and how they relate to each other. But to me, those are common sense. You just have to read it. You're going to have to take your time. When you see a question like that is asking classroom specific, most of the time, it's literally just a matter of like, it's common sense. You know what I mean? Like, take your time and read it. And I promise you're going to get it. But this test was heavy. Both of them were heavy on these materials. So much so, the first test, I was confident that I passed it because it had so much of this material. And I literally feel like I answered like 5 or 6 questions about all of this other stuff that I'm telling you about. Okay. So if you get all the ones that they did ask you wrong, you're going to fail the test, obviously. Okay. So just be aware of that. Heavy lesson 1, but don't stress out about it. Just take your time and read the questions when they're asking them, but also take your time and read through that lesson 1 and make sure that you're understanding what it is that they're saying. You can do this very well by going and doing a little test within the lesson. This one will be very helpful for you in that section. You need to know about earth science. Okay. I hate earth science. So you need to know about the stars, the sun, the earth's axis, and how does the weather change when it's tilted? I can think of specifically both of those tests. They ask questions like, what significance does the earth's tilt on its axis have against the weather in the North Poles or near the equator? You need to understand this, what they're asking, and be able to answer it. They did have like certain scientists in there. Neither one of the tests that I had the certain like scientist names, but I wrote those on my whiteboard. I wrote like pig, scheme, you know what I mean? Like I wrote just a little something to help me remember a little something. But again, that's kind of like the clouds. If I miss one or two of those questions because I'm focusing more on the stuff that it's heavy in, then I'm willing to do that. Cause I could not sit here and play with them with these names. Okay. So there's that. Which we did have to learn those names earlier in the degree, but girl, anyway, so waves. You need to study the chart about waves. You need to know what a crest is, what wavelength is, what amplitude is. You need to understand frequency. And what I mean by understand frequency, you need to understand like it's a certain wording. Like if you understand it, when you see the wording, you're not thrown off by the way that they have worded it. If I can find examples, I'll leave examples below or I'll put them on the screen because I know this is very annoying. When you study something a certain way and then they change up the wording on you, just take your time and read. I promise you're gonna get it, okay? Um, and honestly, if you woman, if your mother, you have kids, when I was looking at the frequency and the amplitude and the crest and all that kind of stuff, I was just thinking about contractions, okay? And it really helped me out, okay? Because I believe there was one question that asked like something about the speed or something, and the answer was frequency, but I was thinking about contraction. So just find that thing that helps you to remember this information for what it is. Don't take it as like, Bible. I'm not saying that it all has to be true, but you got to pass the test, okay? So you're going to have to get over that and pray that the Lord will help you as he helped me. You need to know about renewable and non-renewable resources and then the benefits to both of those. There was a lot of questions about this as well. So, yeah, know those things. Like, yeah, you get it. If you need to know the benefits and the downsides to both, which I'm pretty sure you're pretty smart and you get it. Just, I would also look at what those resources are. Like, is it wind energy, solar, nuclear? I would make sure you know what the resources, the non-renewable and the renewable resources are, and then the effects, the benefits and the effects or whatever of using both. The effects of pollution, you need to know that, which you're smart. I know that you know. I know that you know it's not good to be polluting the earth and the oceans and all that kind of stuff. So again, those are things you just have to take your time and read. And the next one, the last thing that I have is traits. I had to take some time for this one because the first test had a question about earlobes, okay? And it was like if the kid had attached earlobes, then that means the parent had whatever. So I had to go in and really, I wanted to understand what were they asking me because I know I got that one wrong because I was just like, what? So you need to understand recessive and dominant traits, okay? Dominant is obviously dominant. It's the one that's showing up. Recessive is the one that is hidden. But you have to figure out how to remember those things. Because I was thinking like recede, like recess, like in the recesses, like in the back, or recede, like a hairline receded. So just whatever way. If you got to sing songs, if you got to make songs to get the information, like I said, mnemonics are very helpful whenever you can. And then make use of that whiteboard, okay? I know that you will pass, just like I passed. I was very nervous. And let me tell you, every other OA that I took, as soon as I clicked on the screen, it was ready. The class was going. This one played with me a little bit, but my heart was racing. Like I was literally in here hard down praying because the first time I failed it, I was very upset because I knew that it was hard for me to get the information. So I believe that you can do it just like I did it. Okay. As always, if you have a question, ask one, and I'll see you in the next video.